Spiritual power is the only power. Introduction. My friend, let me remind you of something the world has forgotten, something buried beneath headlines, beneath fear, beneath the constant noise of modern life. There is only one true power in this universe, and it is spiritual. Not money, not status, not fear, not fate, not what they said about you, not what you've failed at, not even what you think is holding you back. These things seem powerful. They make noise. They move quickly. They create the illusion of control. But they are shadows, flickers on the wall of a greater reality. Spiritual power is the light behind those shadows. It is the force that shapes life from the inside out. It doesn't depend on outer conditions. It doesn't wait for permission. It simply is, timeless, changeless, always present. And it lives within you. If your life feels uncertain, if fear knocks on your door, if the past still clings to you, if you've reached the point where nothing on the outside can calm the ache within, you are not lost. You are simply being invited back to what is real. You've leaned on false powers, like we all have. You've trusted the branch instead of the root, the echo instead of the voice, the mask instead of the truth. But here is the truth, the one your soul already knows, even if your mind has forgotten. The presence of God is not far away. It is within you. And when you align with that presence, no outer condition can rule you. Not fear, not lack, not judgment, not the mistakes of yesterday. Because you are not a victim of the world, you are a vessel of divine law. You were not born to crawl through life in survival mode. You were born to remember that you are the living temple of an infinite power, a power that heals without effort, provides without struggle, and lifts you without condition. Once you know this, not just in theory but in experience, your peace becomes untouchable, not because nothing changes around you, but because something has changed within you. That's the real shift. That's the true miracle. This is not religious dogma, this is not wishful thinking, this is spiritual law, and it never fails. If these words resonate with something deep inside, something ancient and silent that stirs when truth is spoken, then you already belong here. This isn't just another message, this is a return to what's real. And if you're ready to keep going, to go deeper, to walk the narrow road back to your own divine center, I invite you to subscribe to the Middle Book channel where timeless spiritual truth is remembered, one soul at a time. Because you didn't stumble here by accident. You were led here by the part of you that never forgot. And now, the real journey begins. Chapter 1. The Law That Never Fails. Let us begin with the most vital fact in the universe. There is a law that governs life, and it never fails. Not sometimes, not often, not if you're lucky or chosen or spiritually elite. Always, in every place, at every hour, under all circumstances. This law is spiritual. And being spiritual, it is invisible to the senses, but utterly dominant in effect. It rules quietly, impersonally, and exactly. Just as gravity operates regardless of whether you're a saint or a sinner, this law governs your thoughts, your beliefs, and your conditions with unfailing precision. You do not need to make this law work. You need only to stop resisting it. The philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson, who understood spiritual cause better than most of his time, once wrote, "As a man thinketh, so is he." He was not being poetic. He was describing a mechanism. What you hold in your mind and heart becomes your world. The book of Proverbs said the same long before him. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And Christ Jesus taught with unshakable clarity, according to your faith, be it unto you. These are not religious phrases. They are instructions on how the universe actually functions. What you experience in your outer life is nothing more than the printout of the thoughts and convictions you entertain inwardly. Your mind is the projector, the world is the screen. If the image on the screen displeases you, there is no use in scratching or repainting the screen. You must go back to the projector. That projector is your consciousness, and consciousness, dear friend, is everything. If you are suffering, it is not because life is cruel, it is not because God has turned his face from you. It is not because fate has decided you must endure hardship. It is simply because somewhere, at some level, A false belief has taken root in your mind and it is producing its natural fruit. You may not be conscious of the belief. That is part of the trouble. But the law is not fooled. It responds not to what you claim to believe, but to what you deeply habitually expect. This is not meant to condemn you. Quite the contrary. This is the most liberating truth you will ever hear, because if your own thinking has created the conditions around you, then it is your thinking that can uncreate them, and nothing outside of you, no person, no economy, no accident of birth, can stop you from doing that. Now you may say, "But I didn't choose this pain. I didn't ask for this trouble." Perhaps not with your lips, but the mind is deeper than the mouth. You may have rehearsed fear in your imagination for years. You may have entertained self-doubt, bitterness, or guilt without knowing how powerfully creative those emotional states truly are. You may have accepted limitations spoken over you in childhood and continued to breathe life into them long after they should have been thrown away. Spiritual law is not punishing you. It is mirroring you. You are not the victim of some external force. You are the architect of your own vibration, and vibration precedes condition. This is why Jesus emphasized inner work above all else. He spoke of faith, of inner purity, of the state of the heart, not to impress theologians, but because he knew that the kingdom of heaven is within. And when that inner kingdom is clean and aligned with truth, the outer world must conform. But let me say this plainly. You cannot fool the law. You cannot declare truth with your mouth and continue feeding fear with your imagination. You cannot say, "I am abundant," and then secretly indulge in worry about money. You cannot say, "I am healed," while mentally rehearsing your symptoms day and night. The law hears not your words, but your vibration. And vibration comes from belief, not lip service. I've heard people say, "But I've prayed for change and nothing happened." No, my friend. Something always happens when you pray rightly. If nothing happened, it was not prayer. It was worry wrapped in religious language. Real prayer is not begging. Real prayer is not a bargaining session with God. Real prayer is a change of consciousness, a shift in the inner landscape. And when that shift occurs, the outer form must respond. You cannot pray for light and then stay in darkness. You cannot affirm good and dwell in resentment. You cannot call yourself a child of God while secretly believing you're cursed. As long as two beliefs battle within you, the higher one will not dominate. It will merely be neutralized by the lower. This is why Jesus said, "Let your eye be single." The single eye is unwavering faith. It is inner alignment. It is the laser focus of consciousness upon truth. That truth is this: there is only one power in the universe. That power is good. That power is spirit. That power is working through you right now. All so-called evil is merely the absence of alignment with that power. Just as darkness is not a thing, but the absence of light, so sickness, fear, lack, and failure are not things in themselves, but the shadows cast by a consciousness that has forgotten its source. But once remembered, once spirit is consciously welcomed, affirmed, and allowed to govern, those shadows dissolve like mist before the sun, not by force, not by struggle, but by the lawful presence of light. You do not have to fix everything today. You do not have to undo years of error in a moment. You need only begin. Begin by knowing, not merely believing, that there is a law of the Spirit, that it works through you, that it works for you, that it never fails. This is the law that shaped the universe. It holds the stars in their orbits. It causes seeds to bloom and hearts to beat and rain to fall on the just and the unjust alike. It is not emotional. It does not require bribery. It only asks for your agreement. You are not a victim. You are not at the mercy of fate. You are the place where infinite power desires to express itself. And when you cooperate with that power, by aligning your thoughts with truth, by speaking words of life, by letting love be the dominant force in your heart, law will not reward you. It will simply reflect you. Because it always has, and it always will. Chapter 2. The Great Lie. Evil has power. There is one idea more poisonous than all others, and it has ruled this world for far too long. It is the idea that evil has power. This is the great lie. People believe in two powers, good and evil, God and the devil, light and darkness. And so long as you believe in two powers, you will always be torn between fear and faith, peace and panic, truth and illusion. But let me tell you the truth plainly. There is no second power. There is no God and something else. There is only God, one presence, one mind, one law, one power. That's all. That's everything. So-called evil has no real power of its own. It cannot create. It cannot heal. It cannot bless. What we call evil is only the misuse or misunderstanding of spiritual power. And that power always comes from the same source, the spirit within. You must understand this deeply, if you are to be free. All fear is rooted in the belief that something outside of God can harm you, that some force out there has the ability to ruin your peace, rob your health, destroy your life. But once you accept that only spiritual power is real, fear loses its foundation. You don't need to be afraid of the darkness when you know how to turn on the light. Look at your life. Every problem you face, whether it appears as disease, lack, conflict, or sorrow, is not an enemy with power. It is a symptom, a shadow cast by wrong thought, habitual fear, or unconscious belief. But the shadow has no substance. It vanishes the moment you face it with the truth. When you understand that evil is not a force, but a condition of imbalance and a lack of alignment with truth, then you begin to stop running. You begin to stop reacting. You begin to stand. This doesn't mean you deny that suffering exists. Of course not. People suffer. The world suffers. But the cause of that suffering is not a power outside of God. It is a temporary forgetting of God's presence and the laws that govern His universe. When you align with truth, the suffering begins to lift. Maybe not all at once, but steadily, like the mist rising as the sun grows stronger. The truth does not fight the false. The truth dissolves the false by being true. You've seen it yourself. You've seen how fear feeds on itself, how worry creates more things to worry about. You've seen how people get trapped in cycles of failure, of heartbreak, of disease, not because they are cursed, but because they never changed their pattern of thought. They never stopped bowing to the idea that something outside of them was stronger than what lived within, and that's the real danger of the lie. It doesn't just scare you, it weakens you. It convinces you that you are separate from your source, that you must fight your way back to God, beg for mercy, earn your healing and prove your worth. But none of that is true. You have never been separate from the power that sustains all life. You are not outside of it. You are within it. You are made of it. You are held in it right now, even if you've forgotten. This is why your consciousness matters. What you accept in thought, you experience in form. If you agree with fear, you lend it power. If you focus on lack, you reinforce it. But if you stop, if you lift your attention and say, no, only God is here, only spiritual power is real, something begins to shift, something invisible, but undeniable. You see, the universe doesn't respond to panic. It responds to alignment. The more deeply you accept the truth of oneness, that no condition, no circumstance, no person has power over your life unless you grant it, the more the outer world begins to reshape itself to match the truth within you. This is not magic. It is the law. A spiritual law, but law all the same. Precise, predictable, and always faithful. If you're facing something difficult right now, a diagnosis, a betrayal, a financial drought, I want you to pause, take a breath, and remember this. That condition is not a power. It is a challenge. And all challenges are invitations to grow, to release, to return to truth. You do not need to conquer evil. You only need to stop feeding it. Stop giving it your belief, your energy, your agreement. The moment you stop reinforcing it in thought, it begins to lose its hold. What we stop energizing begins to die, and what we bless begins to bloom. The only reason evil appears strong is that people believe in it. Withdraw your belief, and its foundation crumbles. You are not a pawn being pushed between good and evil. You are the expression of divine intelligence, the child of a law that cannot be broken, a law that is love and truth and order, a law that operates through you, not against you. So stand in that truth. Speak it, think it, live it. not with defiance, but with quiet certainty. Declare inwardly, "This problem has no authority over me. This fear has no place in me. This appearance has no reality in God, and therefore none in me." You don't have to feel strong to begin. You just have to refuse to surrender to the lie. That's where all transformation starts, not in the world, but in the mind. The moment you say no to the lie of duality, you say yes to healing, yes to peace, yes to the one power that has never failed and never will, the spiritual power within you. And that, my friend, is the truth. Always has been, always will be. Chapter 3. You don't have a problem. You have a pattern. People come to me and say, "I don't know what's wrong. I've tried everything. I pray, I affirm, I do the work. But the problem is still here." And I always ask the same question. Are you treating the problem or are you treating the pattern? Because here's what most people don't understand. The issue is never the issue. The condition you're facing, no matter how painful, is not the true problem. It's a mirror, a reflection. The visible result of an invisible mold you've been carrying in your mind for a long time, perhaps even your entire life. That mold is your pattern. And until you change it, the scenery of your life will keep changing in appearance but not in substance. Different job, same frustration. New partner, same disappointment. Temporary breakthrough, same collapse. You've seen it happen. Maybe you've lived it more than once. So has almost everyone, until they wake up. So let me say it as plainly as I can. Your life is not shaped by chance. It is shaped by mental equivalence. The term mental equivalent refers to the idea, the image, the inner expectation that you carry around a particular subject. If your deepest belief about money is that it's scarce and difficult, no amount of affirmations will permanently change your finances because the pattern underneath is still running. If you believe deep down that love is dangerous or that people always leave, then even the most beautiful relationship will eventually bend to fit that script. This isn't punishment. This is the law. And spiritual law is neutral. It doesn't favor the rich over the poor or the spiritual over the worldly. It simply reflects back to you what you are mentally and emotionally radiating, whether you realize it or not. You may say, "But I don't believe in lack. I affirm abundance every day." Yes, with your lips. But what about when the bills come? What happens in the quiet moments when no one is watching, when the fear creeps in, when you brace for disappointment? That's your pattern. And don't be discouraged. This is not a cause for shame, this is cause for transformation. Because once you see the pattern, you're no longer its prisoner. You become its master. The moment you take responsibility for the inner blueprint, you can build an entirely new structure, one based not on fear, but on truth. The truth is that you are not broken. You do not need to be fixed. What needs healing is your perception of yourself, your relationship with the law, and your sense of what is possible. So how do we change the pattern? First, we become aware. You cannot change what you will not face. Sit quietly and ask yourself, what do I really believe about this area of life? Not what should I believe, not what I wish were true, but what do I really expect when I'm tired, when I'm afraid, when I'm not performing for others? What does my reaction reveal? That reaction, that habitual response, is the pattern, and the law is responding to it, not to your surface-level declarations. Second, once the pattern is exposed, we begin to displace it, not by fighting it, but by replacing it. Nature abhors a vacuum. You don't destroy darkness, you introduce light. You don't wrestle with false belief, you install a higher one. That's where the real work begins. Spiritual power is not passive. It doesn't wait around hoping things get better. It deliberately replaces falsehood with truth. So if your pattern is fear, install trust. If your pattern is resentment, install forgiveness. If your pattern is lacking, install divine abundance. Not by force, but by repetition, vision, and spiritual certainty. You are not repeating affirmations to convince the universe. The universe already agrees with you. You are repeating affirmations to convince yourself. Because once your inner self is persuaded, the outer world will conform. This is not psychology. This is spiritual causation. Thought becomes form. always has, always will. And the form cannot be changed permanently unless the thought that created it is changed first. That is why some people find themselves circling the same mountain for years. They fix the outer appearance, only to find the inner condition unchanged. They paint the house but never fix the foundation. And when the wind comes, when it always does, the paint peels and the cracks return. But when you change the pattern, even subtly, life begins to respond. Perhaps the healing is not overnight, but the energy shifts, the story changes, the cycle breaks, and you no longer repeat the past, because you're no longer living from it. Don't underestimate how powerful this realization is. People spend years trying to change their outer world, never knowing that all along the key was inside, and they had it in their hand the entire time. The patterns in your life are not permanent. They are not destiny. They are choices. Sometimes unconscious, sometimes inherited, sometimes formed through pain. But choices nonetheless. And what has been chosen can be rechosen. You may not see the full result today. That's all right. You don't plant a seed in the morning and expect a tree by nightfall, but you do expect growth, because you trust the soil, you trust the law, you trust the process. So start now. Let the pattern come into the light. See it not with judgment, but with clarity. And then begin to create a new mold, a new spiritual template for the life you actually desire. Because you don't have a problem, you have a pattern, and the pattern is yours to change. Chapter 4. God is closer than your breath. One of the most devastating illusions humanity has ever embraced is the idea that God is far away. He lives somewhere up in the sky, behind the stars, beyond the reach of our pain, watching silently from a distance, perhaps intervening now and then. If we beg hard enough, cry long enough, or behave just right. But let me tell you the truth. God is not far. God is not outside. God is not later. God is here. God is now. God is closer than your breath. This truth changes everything. Because if God is right where you are, not in theory, but in reality, then you are never alone. You are never separate from the source of wisdom, healing, peace, and strength. You are not reaching out for some distant power. You are awakening to the presence that is already within you. The first mistake we make in spiritual life is to put God somewhere else. In a church, a book, a ritual, a mountain, a priest, or a day of the week. We treat the infinite as though it were limited to time and space, and then we wonder why we feel empty, disconnected, or unsure. But friend, you cannot be separate from your own essence. Just as a wave cannot be separate from the ocean, you cannot be separate from the spirit that gives you life. God is the very breath in your lungs, the intelligence behind your heartbeat, the quiet knowing beneath your thoughts. You may forget him, but he never forgets you. You may wander, but he never leaves. You may close your eyes, but he remains right where he's always been, at the center of your being. There is no distance in spirit. Distance is a concept for bodies and objects, not for the divine, and since you are spiritual at your core, any feeling of separation is not a fact. It is a false perception, a cloud passing over the sun. The sun is still shining. You've just turned your back to the light. And turning back is simple, not always easy, but always simple. It begins with stillness, not with noise, not with more effort, not with frantic affirmations or desperate prayers. With stillness, with a willingness to be quiet, not just outwardly but inwardly, to listen. Most people pray as if they're trying to shout over the silence, but true prayer is the opposite. It is learning to listen until you can hear what the silence is already saying. And what it is always saying is this: I am here. Not as a voice, not as a booming revelation, but as an atmosphere, a vibration, a knowing, a peace that rises uninvited when the mind gets out of the way. You don't have to go to a sacred place to feel the presence. You only have to make where you are sacred by recognizing it. The kingdom of heaven is not a far-off paradise. It is within you. And when you enter into that inner chamber, even for a few moments, you begin to remember what the world made you forget. You remember that you are not a broken creature clawing your way back to God. You are a radiant expression of God, learning to wake up. You remember that power does not come from striving. It comes from knowing. Knowing who you are, knowing what you carry, knowing that every breath you take is proof that life itself still believes in you. I have known people who spent years seeking miracles outside themselves, never realizing that the greatest miracle of all, the divine presence, was sitting quietly inside them the whole time, waiting to be noticed. When you truly feel this presence, not as a concept, but as a living experience, fear begins to fade. Not because your outer life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you are no longer mistaken for appearances for power. You stop begging, you start trusting, you stop asking, "Where is God?" and begin declaring, "God is here." And in that moment, everything begins to change, not because the world has shifted, but because you have. You become calm where there was anxiety. You become bold where there was doubt. You become free where there was guilt. Why? Because you are no longer leaning on outer things to carry you. You are standing on the rock of inner truth, and that truth is unshakable. Even in the midst of chaos, that presence never leaves. Even when you forget, it remembers. Even when you fall, it lifts. Now, someone may say, "But I don't feel it. I try to connect, but nothing happens." My friend, connection is not something you create. It's something you uncover. The connection is already there. It's your awareness that needs adjusting. If the radio isn't playing music, you don't assume the station is broken. You adjust the dial, you clear the static, you fine-tune the frequency, and the music was always there waiting for you to hear. The same is true of God. He has not moved. He does not come and go. He is. What changes is your receptivity, your willingness to sit in silence long enough to remember what you forgot when you got distracted by the noise of the world. So return to the silence, breathe, and feel the life within your breath. That life is not yours alone. It is shared. It is God living in you. Walk outside and observe nature, the pattern, the order, the patience. That is not random. That is intelligence at work, and the same intelligence animates you. You don't need to be a mystic to feel God. You only need to pause long enough to remember that you are never alone. God is not an emergency exit. God is the air you live in, the ground beneath every thought, the fire behind every insight, the love under every longing. You can't run from him, you can't lose him. You can only forget him and then remember again. So when the world feels heavy, and the old doubts return, and the fear tries to knock again, don't panic, don't run, close your eyes, be still, and remember, God is closer than your breath. Chapter 5. The Word is Power. There is something you use every single day, something so ordinary, so familiar, that you rarely stop to consider its power. Yet it is the most creative force at your disposal. It is your word, not just the sounds you make, not the idle chatter or casual phrases. I am talking about your spoken word, the deliberate, conscious declaration of thought into form. It is the mechanism by which spirit becomes flesh, thought becomes circumstance, and the invisible becomes visible. The very first chapter of Genesis opens not with action, but with utterance. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. This was not poetic metaphor. This was spiritual instruction. The divine word, the inner conviction spoken aloud, is the starting point of all creation. And so it is with you. You were made in the image and likeness of God, not in body, but in nature. You are a spiritual being, gifted with the power to think, feel, and speak. And what you speak, you call into your life. Every word is a seed, and every seed bears fruit. You are never speaking into empty air. You are always speaking into law, and the law does not forget. It does not overlook, it does not skip. Every word returns to you multiplied, sometimes immediately, sometimes slowly, but always faithfully. This is why we must speak with care, not with fear, but with reverence. Because our words are not passive sounds, they are containers of energy, and energy always seeks form. If you speak fear, you strengthen it. If you speak hate, you spread it. If you speak of lack, you invite more of it. Not because God is punishing you, but because you are operating a law that cannot be mocked. But the reverse is also gloriously true. If you speak peace, you extend it. If you speak love, you multiply it. If you speak abundance, you begin to align with its current, and it will begin to flow in your direction. The spiritual principle is simple. Your word sets the tone of your life. Your word determines the frequency you're living. And life responds to your frequency, not your intentions. Most people speak out of habit. They speak based on emotion, or what others are saying, or what they feel in the moment. And then they wonder why their life seems chaotic, unstable, or out of alignment. They forget that every statement is an instruction to the universe, an order issued to the creative machinery of life. You say, "I'm always sick." The law says, "Very well." You say, "Nothing ever works out for me." The law replies, "As you wish." You say, "I'm broke, I'm unlucky, I'm stuck," and the law obeys, without judgment, without emotion, without exception. You do not have to mean it for it to manifest. You only have to say it with feeling, and life will begin to organize itself to match. The subconscious mind, which governs most of your behavior, is not rational, it is obedient. It does not evaluate truth. It accepts what it is told, especially when that information is repeated often and delivered with emotion. This is why Emmet Fox insisted that idle words were not harmless. They are creative energy misused. If you would not frame it and hang it on your wall, don't say it. If you don't want to live in it tomorrow, don't declare it today. Now someone might ask, isn't this just positive thinking? No, it is far more than that. Positive thinking can be shallow. It can be cosmetic, a way to cover fear with a smile. But the use of the spiritual word is different. It is not surface-level optimism. It is a deliberate alignment with divine law. You are not just saying nice things. You are calling forth the truth. You are placing your consciousness in harmony with the way the universe really works. When Jesus healed, he didn't beg. He didn't plead. He spoke. He said, "Be thou made whole. Arise. Your faith has made you well." His word was direct, firm, and clear, not because he was performing magic tricks, but because he understood the law. He knew that the word, when spoken in alignment with divine truth, is backed by the entire force of creation. You carry that same potential. The same law is in operation now, in you. It does not change. It does not expire. The only question is whether you will use it consciously or unconsciously, whether you will speak truth or repeat the errors of fear, limitation, and doubt. Begin now. Begin by watching your words. Not with guilt or anxiety, but with mindfulness. Become aware of what you declare in casual conversation. Notice how often you speak of your limitations instead of your possibilities, your fears instead of your faith. And when you catch yourself declaring something you don't wish to live, stop, cancel it. You have that authority. Say silently, "No, that is not the truth of me. The truth is, I am guided. I am provided for. I am one with the power that creates worlds." Use your words not to describe the mess, but to announce the truth, not to beg for light, but to command it, not to echo appearances, but to invoke reality. And do not wait for evidence. Do not ask the world for permission to speak your freedom. Speak it now and the world will catch up later. Say what you want to see, speak what you want to live. Declare what you know is real in spirit, even if you don't yet see it in form. Because what you say with conviction, you will live with certainty. The word is not just sound, the word is power, and it is in your hands. Chapter 6. Stop fighting. Start knowing. So many people spend their lives in battle, fighting fear, fighting sickness, fighting poverty, fighting the past, fighting for control, fighting for answers. They pray like soldiers going to war. They affirm with clenched fists. They meditate with tension in their breath, their minds still racing, trying to make something happen. And they wonder why nothing shifts. The truth is simple, and it will set you free. You are not here to fight. You are here to know. Spiritual power is not activated by struggle. It is not unlocked through effort. It does not respond to fear dressed up as devotion. It responds to one thing, and one thing only: inner alignment with truth. The need to fight disappears the moment you realize there was never an enemy, only a misunderstanding, a shadow mistaken for substance, a condition made solid by belief, now ready to be released by clarity. You don't fight darkness, you turn on the light, you don't wrestle with lies, you recognize the truth. This is the difference between human will and spiritual knowing. One is noisy, restless, and unsure. The other is calm, centered, and certain. When Jesus stood before sickness, storms, or even death, he didn't fight. He didn't explain. He didn't ask about the condition to go. He simply knew. He knew that divine power was present. He knew that the law was already at work. He knew that what appeared in front of him could not stand against the truth, and he acted from that knowing. You are meant to do the same, not by copying rituals, not by memorizing words, but by realizing that you are one with the same power that governed him. That spirit lives in you. And when you stop resisting, when you stop acting as if God is out there and start recognizing God as here, now within, then the resistance melts and the results begin. But as long as you are fighting, you are affirming the power of what you fear. You are making it real to yourself. You are feeding it attention, belief, and energy, and what you feed grows. This is why fear never helps. Worry never improves a condition. Stress never solves a problem. They are all signs that you've slipped into doubt, and doubt is just faith in the wrong direction. People often ask, but if I don't fight, am I being passive? Absolutely not. Knowing is the most active, powerful stance you can take in the universe. It is not passive to stand in truth when appearances scream the opposite. It is the greatest spiritual discipline there is. To know the truth when your bank account says lack, that's power. To know the truth when your body feels pain, that's dominion. To know the truth when the world around you is confused and afraid, that is leadership of the highest kind. Because what you know with conviction, you bring into form, and what you doubt, you delay. You do not need to convince God to act. God is action itself. Divine love is always moving, always flowing, always seeking to express as harmony, health, joy, and freedom. You don't need to push that power. You need only to get out of its way. That means letting go of panic, letting go of control, letting go of the idea that it's all up to you. It never was. It never will be. You are the instrument, not the source. And your job is not to do the work. Your job is to stay in tune. When a violin is tuned correctly, it sings without effort. But if the strings are too tight, it squeaks and strains. So it is with the soul. You cannot manifest from tension. You cannot affirm while secretly doubting. You cannot declare truth while your energy contradicts it. So pause, get still, breathe, and begin again. Not from fear, but from knowing. Knowing that there is no absence in God. Knowing that what you seek is already present in spirit. Knowing that you are not separate from your supply, your healing, your peace. You are simply remembering what was always there. Do not try to force results. That is the language of the ego. The spirit does not force, it reveals. And the moment you know something to be true in the silence of your being, the world will begin to shape itself around that recognition. It may not happen in a flash, but it will happen, because the law cannot be broken, and the law always responds to what you know to be real. So stop fighting. You've fought long enough. You've tried to fix things with effort. You've tried to change outer circumstances without changing the inner climate. You've exhausted yourself battling shadows, and now you are ready to step into the truth. You are ready to live from knowing, not from wishful thinking, not from spiritual performance, but from a quiet, steady, unstoppable awareness of your union with the one true power in this universe. That knowing will carry you farther than years of effort. That knowing will still the storm before the wind dies down. That knowing will open doors without you having to knock. Because when you stop fighting and start knowing, you stop working against the current and begin flowing with divine law itself. And that current is strong, that current is wise, that current is already carrying you home. Chapter 7. Build the mental equivalent. You may pray for change, you may work hard, you may speak the right words, keep your thoughts positive, and repeat your affirmations with all the sincerity in the world. But nothing will shift Not truly, not permanently, until you build the mental equivalent of the thing you desire. This is not a metaphor. It is a law as real and as dependable as gravity. And once you understand it, you'll stop blaming the world for what you're not receiving and start transforming your life from the inside out. Every condition you see in your life, good or bad, welcome or unwelcome, exists because you have a mental equivalent of it. That's all. Not because God has favored or punished you, not because fate dealt you a strange hand, but because the inner picture you carry, the emotional tone you sustain, and the expectations you hold in your subconscious have taken form. The outer world is not your master. It is your mirror, and it reflects with astonishing precision the state of your inner atmosphere. That's the mental equivalent. You can think of it as the blueprint in your mind, a mold, an energetic template around which the substance of life forms itself. You can't pour new material into an old mold and expect a different shape. You can't create a life of freedom using a blueprint built from fear. This is why people find themselves stuck, even when they are trying so hard. They try to change their lives without changing their mental architecture. They keep rearranging the furniture while the house itself is cracked at the foundation. You don't get what you want. You get what you are equivalent to. Now don't let this discourage you. Let it liberate you. Because if the cause is in you, the solution is too. And it means you are not waiting on the world to change. You are only waiting to create a new mold. And you can start today to build the mental equivalent of anything, whether it's health, love, prosperity, or peace. You must first ask, what would that feel like? What would it be like, emotionally and mentally, to live in the experience I say I want? It's not enough to say, I want more money. You must develop the mental atmosphere of abundance. You must become someone who feels provided for, supported, and free. You must release the tension, the fear, the clutching that says, there's not enough. Because as long as you feel a lack, even if you speak abundance, the mental equivalent is still scarcity. If you say, I want love, but carry deep beliefs that you are unworthy, unsafe, or invisible, then your mental equivalent will attract relationships that match those inner conditions. Not to hurt you, but to reveal the pattern that still lives in you. The law is not punishing you, it is reflecting you, and reflection is a gift because it lets you adjust the original. This is not about blame, it's about responsibility. It's about reclaiming your spiritual authorship. You are not a victim of your old patterns, you are the one who can replace them. So how do we do it? First, with clarity. Be clear on what you want, not in fantasy but in vibration. Ask, what would it feel like to live in harmony, in joy, in abundance? Let that feeling become familiar. Not forced, familiar. Second, with repetition. The mind accepts what it hears often. Your subconscious is like fertile soil. What you plant, it grows, not because it knows what is good, but because it knows what is present. So plant the right seeds, speak the words, hold the images, let them become normal to you. Third, with consistency. You don't go to the gym once and expect a transformation. The same applies to spiritual law. You build the mental equivalent brick by brick until the structure is strong enough to hold the life you desire. And fourth, with imagination. Imagination is not child's play. It is the divine faculty through which God creates. Every invention, every painting, every healing, every revolution began in someone's imagination. Use yours deliberately. Picture what you desire, not to fantasize but to form, and then let it go. Not with indifference but with trust. When the mental equivalent is built, the outer must come. It may come through a door you didn't expect. It may take a shape you hadn't imagined. But it will come, because law cannot contradict itself. And if the result doesn't arrive, go back inward, not with blame, not with despair, but with curiosity. What belief still remains unhealed? What emotional state still clings to the old story? What piece of the mold still needs reshaping? This is the spiritual life, not begging the world to change, but changing your inner world until it reflects your highest knowing. You are not a victim of reality. You are a builder of consciousness, and everything you see around you began as a pattern within you. So build carefully, build joyfully, build intentionally. And remember, the universe is not keeping score of how hard you try. It is responding to what you are equal to in thought, feeling, and belief. You don't need to force what is already yours by divine right. You only need to match it. Build the inner form and the outer will follow. This is not theory, this is not philosophy, this is the law. Chapter 8. The Key That Unlocks Every Door. If you've been listening closely, then by now you understand something very few people ever do, that the outer conditions of your life are not the result of chance, punishment, or luck. They are shaped by thought, molded by belief, and sustained by the mental patterns you hold, consciously or not. You understand that spiritual power is not far away. It is not doled out by an external force. It is already within you, waiting for your permission to flow freely. But even when we know this, even when we pray, affirm, meditate, and declare the truth, some people still feel blocked. They still feel like something is in the way. And more often than not, that something is the absence of love. I don't mean romantic love. I don't mean emotion. I mean the vibration of divine love, the energy of union, forgiveness, compassion, harmony, and trust, the only real energy in the universe, the essence of God. Love is not a sentiment. It is not weakness. It is not soft. Love is the most powerful spiritual force in existence. It dissolves what fear builds. It heals what guilt corrodes. It lifts what shame buries. It restores what the resistance blocks. And more importantly, love aligns you with the law. You can say all the right affirmations. You can speak health, prosperity, joy, and peace. But if your heart is bitter, if resentment lives beneath your words, if you are holding someone hostage in your mind through judgment, or holding yourself hostage through regret, nothing can fully move. Because the law cannot flow through a vessel that is still clenching its fists. You cannot receive with a closed heart. And yet this is where many people remain stuck, not because they are doing the wrong things, but because they are doing the right things without love. Love is the key that opens every spiritual gate. Forgiveness is not just good advice. It is not just a moral virtue. Forgiveness is a spiritual tool, and it is every bit as mechanical and precise as gravity. When you release a grudge, when you finally stop rehearsing the old betrayal, the wound, the injustice, something unlocks, something breaks free. Life starts to breathe again, even if you might not notice it right away. What happened was okay is not what forgiveness is. I no longer choose to keep my soul chained to that memory. It is expressing, I no longer let suffering define who I am. I am at liberty. And you release yourself when you forgive. Really, really, from the bottom of your heart. The miracle is that. The movement is that. Everything in your life starts to rise along with you as you start to rise. However, forgiving is just the first step. Living in the frequency of love is the most profound invitation, not only to other people but also to oneself, in the direction of life, in the direction of each moment that comes your way. Most people don't realize how much they judge life itself. They resist what is. They argue with time. They curse their circumstances, belittle their bodies, and criticize their own souls. And then they wonder why nothing feels easy. You can't create in a state of inner war. You can't attract joy when your frequency is contracted. You can't call forth your highest good while secretly believing you're unworthy to receive it. But love changes all of that. Love opens you to the flow of spirit. Love relaxes your resistance. Love returns you to your natural state, trust, openness, surrender. And from that state, life begins to move, gently, smoothly, sometimes suddenly, but always rightly, always in divine order. If something in your life has felt stuck, ask yourself honestly, where have I not yet chosen love? Is there someone you haven't forgiven? Is there a part of yourself you still shame? Is there a memory you still fight? A pattern you secretly believe you deserve? Because where love has not yet entered, fear still reigns, and fear always blocks flow. There's no need to shame yourself. There's no need to analyze every wound. Just recognize this. The moment you allow love to enter the picture, love for the present, love for the self, love for the divine order behind all things, that's when things begin to soften. And when things soften, they move. The walls you thought were permanent begin to dissolve. The patterns you thought were fate begin to shift. The help you needed begins to appear. Not because love bribed the universe, but because love reconnected you to what was already yours. That's the beauty of this truth. You're not acquiring anything new. You are allowing the truth to become visible again. And the truth is this: you are already one with all that is good. You don't need to beg for peace. You don't need to chase prosperity. You don't need to earn healing. You need only to remove the blocks. And the greatest block of all is the absence of love. So begin here. Begin with a simple act. Forgive one thing. Release one story. Speak kindly to yourself for a change. Stop resisting what is and start blessing what is unfolding. Bless your breath. Bless your mind. Bless your history. Bless even your pain, for it has brought you here to this moment of remembrance. And then begin to live as if you knew, really knew, that love is not something you have to find. It is something you were made of, something that surrounds you now, something that you are returning to, not for the first time, but as your home. Because love is not the reward at the end of the spiritual path. It is the path, and it is the key that unlocks every door. Conclusion. You have the power now. You've come to the end of this journey, but not the end of your path. In truth, the real path begins here, in the quiet recognition that the power you've been seeking is already within you. Spiritual power is not something distant, delayed, or earned. It is present. It is active. It is yours now. You don't need to strive for it. You need only to stop resisting it. You are not broken. You are not separate. You are not at the mercy of outer conditions. What seemed like a struggle was never punishment. It was the effect of unconscious patterns. But now you know the truth. You are the cause. Your word creates. Your thoughts shape reality. Your inner state determines what flows into form. And the moment you choose truth over fear, clarity over confusion, love over resentment, the entire universe responds. You don't need more time. You need more trust, not in yourself alone, but in the law that governs all things. You are not here to chase power. You are here to embody it. The law is working. God is present. Your soul remembers. Live from that knowing. Speak from it. Act on it. Because the truth is simple, and it will never change. Spiritual power is the only power, and it lives in you now.